speaking of being your authentic self, you mentioned in a video that you had recently done about this article that you read, the Harvard Business Review article, and it said to perform at your best, you have to be that authentic self. And you said you had to conform for many of those years at UHN to this image that you thought, people were expecting of you. How would you describe your authentic self, and what were you doing in terms of conforming to this image you thought that you had to portray?
Yeah, I don't want to misconstrue that UHN has done anything to force me into some sort of conformity. It wasn't that at all. It was my own pressure on myself. And so, I've been really fortunate to be at UHN, where I've had visibility at the senior level for my entire career here. And UHN is a really fancy place with a bunch of really smart people, and it's very rewarding, but also can be a little bit intimidating, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when you're junior in your career. And I've been here for a very long time, and so I started when I was relatively junior in my career. And so a lot of it was my own pressure of what does it take to be successful at UHN? It's probably to fit into the culture of the place. And, I need to speak a certain way. I need to communicate in a certain way. I remember I still not bring my luncheon from home because I wanted to fit in. And these are all stupid, silly things now that I think about, that no one ever said, don't bring your lunch from home. There's no one who told me to do anything differently. It was entirely self-imposed. But what I realized after a few years is that I'm not only robbing myself, but robbing the institution around who I could actually be if I was just to embrace my culture, my individuality, and who I am. And so I think there's a lot of it going on, or maybe it's just me, but I think a lot of people try and fit in to what they think is the social norm. And what I think is important is that as organizational leaders, that we create a culture where people truly feel included, and that they don't need to hide who they are, and that we embrace the diversity of everybody, because that actually creates a richer working environment. And so that's a lot about why I've said in the past that, I have turned myself into a pretzel at times to try and be who I think is the image of what a healthcare executive should be, or a healthcare leader should be. And it's totally unnecessary. And I'm a happier person that I can be myself. I've loved the reception that people also feel like they can be their authentic self. And so I just think it just brings more joy to work when everyone can offer something unique about their background and who they are, and that we can all enjoy each other's differences.
When you said you had this image of what a healthcare executive looks like, what was that image?
So first of all, very professional at all times. And so I'm kind of a casual person, so it's very hard for me to stay 100% professional at all times. I think having a little bit of a more casual leadership style actually brings me joy, but I think it also relates better with other people. And so this image of a very polished executive, I think, is something of the past. And it's amazing to me how many leaders are out there who admit mistakes, admit vulnerability. I think the more you can open up and be vulnerable to people, the more people respond to you. So I do think the leaders of today are much different than the leaders of the past, where it was very much seen as top down and the leader knows everything. And I mean, at this point in time, I am always the least expert in the room. It's everyone else who have deep expertise. And my job is to bring all of those different ideas together in order to create something even bigger. And so that, again, requires you to celebrate the diversity and individuality of different individuals in order to bring together a team vision.
As we're talking about a certain way to dress, a certain way to talk, a certain way to present ourselves, does that tie into executive presence? Do you need executive presence to get to be at that executive level?
Oh my goodness, it's so funny that you mentioned that, because I remember the day I used to wear suits every day. It was I just felt like it was more polished. I looked professional, I looked masculine. And it was a conversation I had with Dr. Catherine Zahn, and she at the time was the chief operating officer at UHN prior to her being CEO at CAMH. And she said to me, Catherine, embrace your femininity. You're not a man, you are a woman, and you're a powerful female leader. Embrace it. Why are you trying to be seen as masculine and having an image of professionalism? Be who you are and dress who you are. And so from that day on, no more suits. I mean, I liked the suits, but I didn't love them. And I started wearing dresses. One, because it's super easy. You just put one piece on. You don't have to worry about mixing and matching. But secondly, I love wearing dresses. I embrace my femininity that way. And I have heard chatter in the past of like, you know, she looks too feminine to be taken seriously. She's too young to be taken seriously. She's Chinese and maybe is underestimated. I have heard that background chatter. I totally don't subscribe to it. I love the fact that I can dress in a way that is who I am and how I want to portray myself to the rest of the world. I get joy out of fashion. So everyone knows I always admire when a woman's put together. And I just think it's one of the aspects of me. And so that was a conscious decision though. And it didn't come easily. It required, you know, a mentor to kind of say, you don't have to dress a certain way, embrace who you are. I'm not coming to work with like my boobs hanging or anything like that. So there is a modicum of decorum here, but I love the idea that you come to work dressed within the realm of reasonableness, but dress who you want to be and how you want to reflect yourself to the world.
Yeah, and you know, as you were saying that about, you know, that's often some of the things, the chatter that you hear. Oh, you know, she's too young or she's from a certain background. How do we go about that? What do you think has helped you the most in advancing in your career, in your leadership journey?
No matter what anyone will say, my own inner dialogue is more destructive than what any dialogue people can say that I might end up picking up. And so I have this inner dialogue that I have learned to quiet down around: you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you don't know what you're doing. There's people who are more expert than you who can do this job. I mean, I still get it from time to time, but you know, over the years, I've grown confidence in knowing that I can figure it out. I can work hard enough and I can do enough prep that I can figure my way through any problem or any challenge. And I think it's really important as you go through your career that you self-reflect. You self-reflect on the failures you've had, the successes you've had, because it helps grow and nurture your own self-worth and how you see yourself. And if you don't have the confidence in yourself, it's very hard for other people to have it. And so I do very much try and shut out any negative dialogue. I've had very little. And so I can't say that I've been subject to any sort of like criticism that is explicit, but I've heard it from time to time, as I'm sure everyone has in their career. It does fuel me, I can tell you that. It's not that different than my mom used to say to me when I would come in with like a 90% test, and she would say, what happened to the rest of the 10%? Or that, you know, Emily got 100%, what's wrong with you? Like, I am quite used to that. So I carry that with me in my adulthood and in my professional life, where it does fuel me when people say like, how come you're not doing better? Or I say to myself, why is it that I'm not doing better? I'll share with you, I have a colleague at UHN and her name is Emily, and she is spectacular and she fuels me, like she inspires me because I really want to be able to meet her standard. And so the things that I've grown up with are exactly the same things that I have now in my adulthood. But I have a very different mindset. And that, I mean, it's taken 47 years to get to here. But I feel like at this point, I got it. I finally got it. I can figure out how do I change the negative to the positive, and how do I fuel myself so that I'm not having that chatter in my head of like, you're just not good enough. It takes a long time though, for me. And anyways, other people I'm sure have figured it out much faster. But I also feel like I had a lot to work through in my younger years.